back for part 2. We're going to color in our little bee, the one that we sketched in part 1. And for our project, we're going to be focusing on a very interesting family of flowers, the rhododendron family, which also includes the azalea, which is a flower that has almost a cult following here where I live in the deep south of the United States. And with our little bee, because the bee, unlike the dragonfly, who we'll be adding color to in just a moment, the bee does not have a lot of transparency. He doesn't have those great big window pane wings, and so we're going to use the classic approach of light to dark in coloring in our little bee. If you were placing him on a flower, you would actually do the background first, and we'll go ahead and add a little background color. And we'll go with pink, since that's a very common rhododendron and azalea shade. So I'm just going to put a little background. Normally, if you were putting in the flower, as we will be later in our project, you would just leave the place where your bee is sketched, and you would leave that empty. You do the flower, the background first, then the bee. Bees and rhododendrons have a fascinating connection that a lot of people are not aware of, and that is the connection of mad honey disease or rhododendron poisoning. And what this is there is a naturally occurring neurotoxin called granotoxin that is present in the nectar in very small amounts in the nectar of rhododendrons and azaleas. It's not harmful in ordinary circumstances. In fact, in parts of Asia, the rhododendron flower is pickled and eaten as a treat. But as a bee uses rhododendron nectar to create honey, it can concentrate that toxin to the point where poisoning can happen. And this reports of this pop up every once in a while. Most recently in Seattle, back in 2011, 3 people ended up in the emergency room because they had eaten some honey that had rhododendron nectar, high enough level of it to create these very unpleasant symptoms. And it's a terribly unpleasant illness, but it only lasts about 24 hours, and it is temporary. And because of this, it has a place in history. In the area that's present-day Turkey, in 67 BC, tribesmen there, and apparently Turkey is a wonderful habitat for rhododendron flowers, and they grow all in the mountains, the mountainous regions of that country, even today. Well, back in 67 BC, the Roman army was invading that land. And so the tribesmen took honey, rhododendron honey, and they laced some honeycomb. Honeycomb was a prized treat in those days, and they laced honeycomb with rhododendron honey and left it on the path where they knew the Romans would find it. And sure enough, the Romans did find it. They ate the honeycomb. They became extremely sick, and so they were defeated with the help of rhododendron honey, or mad honey, as some people call it. Just a little footnote there about bees and rhododendrons. If you are a Arthur Conan Doyle fan, rhododendron poisoning is actually included in a plot line in one of the Sherlock Holmes stories. So, okay, we're going to put a little background there on our bee. We will smooth it with a little bit of white, just to give it a little softness there. And then we'll proceed with coloring in our bee. what we're going to do is we're going to work from light to dark, and so we're going to use a little bit of yellow ochre and put a very light just where the bee has his golden sort of tone. You want to avoid the tendency to reach for the yellow and the black, the classic bee color combo, because he really doesn't have any yellow or black on him. His dark coloration is much closer to what we use as dark umber than it is truly black. And you don't want to overdo the color and make him look unnatural. As always, look at your reference or your specimen closely and see if you see highlights. Okay. All right, so I've just got a little light coverage of yellow ochre there. I'm going to grab a very sharp, and here when you're doing any kind of small subject, sharp point is really very, very important. So I'm going to grab the dark umber, put in his eye, working very lightly, that characteristic soft, large highlight that he has in his eye. Okay, and then I'm going to come back with just the tip and put in a little bit of the texture of his fuzzy head. Okay, there's a bit of a line right next to his eye. Go ahead and include that. And on the other side as well. Okay. All right. I'm going to soften this highlight so it's not purely white. It has very slight coverage of shading over it. There we go. All right, now I'm going to put in his legs. Again, you want to avoid outlining. You want to keep him very simple, not too many, no heavy lines, and not too many, don't try to be too tight on your detail. He's just so small a subject that it's difficult to include too much detail and not have him look a bit fussy. All right, we're going to leave the area up top lighter, but he does have some shadow, so I'm going to put some very small lines just beneath the wings here, where I see that on my reference. Okay, I'm coming back again to get his legs. The joints are very light colored, so you may want to simply leave them uncovered so that you'll be able to see the articulation, the joint between the different segments of his leg. Okay, oops. Okay. And his back legs, much larger, often covered in pollen. This ones are not yet anyway. All right, let me sharpen my pencil. Okay, now bottom of his abdomen is fairly dark and ends in this little pointed area where the sting is located. Okay, but the line is not too hard. So I want to be careful not to draw a hard line. I'm using small strokes to draw this stripe around his abdomen. Likewise again. Okay. And they become less distinct as they move up beneath the wings. All right. Add a few more, a little bit more texture up here where I see it. In the division between the thorax and the abdomen, sort of a shadow. Drawing it all, it's very fuzzy texture, so all of the shading is done with short little pencil strokes that imitate that fuzzy texture. I'm going to point up my pencil here a little on the paper, get a little better point. Okay, now I'm going to go over his wings. Very fine line, very light pressure. Okay. A little bit of shadow under there. See, basically it's just a process of, much like drawing a flower, looking carefully. The wings themselves do have a bit of patterning, but what I'm going to do, and this is a trick you can use anytime you have a lot of very fine patterning to do, I'm going to take my white pencil first, and I'm going to lay down a white layer. His wings are mostly white, but by putting down a waxy layer on the surface, this allows me to draw an incredibly fine line with the colored pencil. That would be difficult to do otherwise. Okay, turning it so that I can draw a straightish line more easily. Okay, and now I'll look at the little bit of patterning that's visible on his wing, and using that very fine line that I can get on top of the white, I'll go ahead and put in a little of that patterning. Okay, it's just barely visible. All right, deepen the shadow areas. Okay, and you can refine your bee as much as you want, but that gives you a basic idea of how to shade him. He doesn't have much transparency, so you don't really have to worry about creating a transparent look. I'm going to go ahead and add a little color behind him. All right then. And now we're back with our dragonfly from part 1. And with the dragonfly, we take an opposite approach. Instead of leaving the space empty for the dragonfly to occupy, we actually draw right through the wings because the wings are transparent. And so if you're creating layers to build your leaf color, you actually would draw right through the wings. I'm going to put down a layer of cream very lightly so that I can have a nice spring green on this leaf. Dragonflies and damselflies are members of the order Odonata, and they have some of the most fantastic names, in my opinion, in the insect kingdom. There are dragonflies called Carolina saddlebags. There are spangled skimmers. There's one called the smoky shadow dragon. They just have wonderful names. All right, fill up our. Okay, now I'm not drawing through his body. The body is remaining uncolored, but I did draw right through the wings very lightly. You can see the leaf right through the wings, and then I'll go ahead and layer my green as well. Okay, go ahead with our next layer of green. Add a little apple green to our leaf. Okay. And here as well. When I get to the wings, I want to be mindful of the fact that there may be some light spots where the wings are. And if so, I will skip those spots. This one on my reference has a little light area at the bottom, so I'm going to be careful about covering that up. Go ahead and put the green in the rest of the wing area. And likewise on this side, a little light on the leading edge. Okay, and filling in the leaf. The next layer of green. Okay. And the darker layer. This is olive green. Okay. Just using a slightly lighter touch, but I'm still putting my layer. Working in the direction of the texture, the leaf texture itself. Okay. I'll go ahead and shade this in, and then we'll come back and work on our dragonfly. Our leaf is shaded in with a layer of olive green. I'm going to take some True Blue and start to put in the basic shading on the dragonfly himself. He does have some black on him, but I'm going to reserve the black for last because we're going to use white to enliven this blue, and we don't want the black to blend at all. Blending with black will deaden any color that it's put on top of, and so instead we're going to put the black on top so that it's very controlled and we can keep the edges sharp and keep it from muddying the colors that we already have. We want to preserve the sort of brilliance that dragonflies have. So put a little body color on him. They come in an amazing array of colors, neon pinks, all kinds of amazing colors, so they're fun to draw for that reason as well. Okay. the long segmented abdomen. I'm using strokes that imitate the shape of this cylindrical form, the abdomen of the dragonfly. I don't want to use flat strokes. Using flat strokes would flatten out the form. And as long as your strokes can imitate the shape of the thing that you're drawing, then even the very smallest texture on the stroke will help to create the look of that form, to make it more three-dimensional. Again, coming back to the three-step process, the blue area, coming back with white now, and white with the true blue really enlivens the color. So along the top, where the light source is, I'm going to do a little blending to smooth that blue and brighten it very slightly and soften it. Okay, also gives it sort of a shiny texture. All right, and my final step then is to come back with the black and put my darks in, not blending, but letting the black sit on top of the blue and the white. We will not put any color over the top of the black. The black merely serves to, by its strong contrast, to help the fine detail to show up, to create very dark shadows that exist on this creature. Okay. And we'll also use it to put in the legs. You can see how the black very much helps these pale colors, the blue and the white, to show up really, really well. The black shows through the wings. We'll break it up a little bit there. Okay. And all right, there we go. All right, we'll also draw the legs with our black, but we're going to do that last because we're going to go ahead and put in a little bit of our patterning. In our project drawing for today, there will be a background behind the rest of the wings, but just for the sake of our example, we have, much like the water droplet technique, we have a lighter version of our color combination that passes beneath the wings, and we're going to come back just like as we did with the dragonfly, and we're going to very lightly, not really burnishing, but just putting down a layer of white. What this does is deposits an invisible layer of wax on the paper that will allow us to make very fine hairlines on top. To suggest the patterning, the window pane formation of the wings. Okay. Keeping a very, very light touch. Okay, and we'll do the other wing here. Okay, so we have both wings drawn. Just as we suggested in the part 1, you don't want to outline every single part of the butterfly's wing texture. Sometimes there's a dark area here. But you do want to suggest enough of it so that you get the sense of the pattern. Okay. And okay. How much you want to include is entirely up to you. Just remember, when drawing the little window panes on the wing, not to line them up so that they have a little bit of a random appearance. Okay. Does not have to be very precise, and that often that's plenty of visual information right there. You can just put sort of a here and there amount of texturing, and we'll look at that further as we move on with our project. So go ahead, I'm going to finish up the other 3 wings in the same fashion. I'll post this as well as our rhododendron project on the site, and I'll see you in a bit. Happy drawing.